Hello and a warm welcome on this Sunday evening of 12th of May. Now you're watching the Daily News Simplified and I'm Ankit. So in today's DNS, we'll be picking up these 7 articles. So without wasting your time, let me start right away with the first article of the day. But before moving forward, please make sure to like this video as it helps us keep motivated. Now the first article of the day, as you can see, appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now, this article highlights that India is trying to streamline its pharmaceutical sector because recently many of the India's pharmaceutical products such as cough syrups, they have been under increased scrutiny worldwide because they have been contaminated with various chemicals and hence they have proven harmful for the peoples who use them. Now, this particular news article is important from two perspectives. The first is GS Paper 2 syllabus because it highlights government policies and interventions for development in various sectors. So you can understand the government of India as well as state governments, they have taken many initiatives to promote the development of pharmaceutical industries in India. Additionally, the GS Paper 3 syllabus highlights effects of liberalization on Indian economy and changes in India's industrial policy. Now, liberalization in Indian economy, it has promoted import of raw material into India, which has increased the size of pharmaceutical industry and hence it has enabled India's pharmaceutical industry to meet global demand of various pharmaceutical products and vaccines. Also, you can see a closely related question. It appeared in the mains of the year 2013 examining the impact of liberalization on companies owned by Indians and whether they are able to compete with multinational companies that have global operations. Now, in this regard, let us discuss in detail about India's pharmaceutical sector. Now, India's pharmaceutical industry is estimated to be of the size of about 10,500 companies. And because of this huge size, India's drug export in the last decade has increased by 2 times. Now, India is world's third largest producer of pharmaceutical products by volume. And it has enabled India to export its pharmaceutical products to as many as 200 countries and territories worldwide. Now, in this regard, India is also a key producer of vaccines. Because you can understand 62% of global demand for vaccines is met by Indian made vaccines. And additionally, 70% of vaccines which are used by World Health Organization, it is also manufactured in India also. Case in point, you saw in the COVID crisis, India was able to scale up its vaccine manufacturing and it enabled India to manufacture vaccines for Indian population in its own territory itself. So you can understand the size of India's pharmaceutical sector is quite large. So in this regard, let us take a look at what are driving factors which has enabled the growth of pharmaceutical sector in India. Let us first understand what are the intellectual property rights regulation and innovation regulation that has enabled India to become a vaccine powerhouse. Now, in this regard, India follows somewhat you can call a liberalized intellectual property rights regime. By liberalizing the patent regime, India has enabled its companies to manufacture what are known as generic drugs. So these generic drugs, they are affordable medicines that are marketed in India and other countries. And this was made possible because of a somewhat liberalized intellectual property regime. Additionally, India has also favored research and development in its domestic companies. So this research and development capacity has enabled India to undertake innovations in drug discovery, vaccine development, as well as scaling up of vaccine manufacturing in India. Now let us move to economic factors that has enabled India to scale up and develop its pharmaceutical industry. The first, as I've already highlighted, that a liberalized intellectual property rights regime has enabled India to manufacture generic drugs. Now these generic drugs are somewhat similar to patented drugs, However, the most important part is that these generic drugs, they are available at much affordable cost. Hence, you can understand these generic drugs have played a key role in reducing out of pocket expenditure of Indian population on healthcare activities. Additionally, India also has a low production cost of its vaccine because of somewhat low labor cost. And you can understand this low production cost is almost one third of that of United States. So naturally, low production cost leads to lower cost of medicines and pharmaceutical products, thereby increasing its export competitiveness in international markets. Additionally, India is filled with abundant talent pool, especially in the fields of biotechnology and vaccine development. As India is the second largest pool of qualified medical practitioners as well as vaccine manufacturers, which has enabled it to scale up its pharmaceutical sector. Also, India is a booming domestic market because of its, first of all, a large population, as well as government policies, which has enabled India to play a key role in medical tourism. Because most of the neighboring countries, their patients, they come to India for their treatment, hence provide a wide market for Indian pharmaceutical products. Further, government's collaboration with other countries has enabled Indian pharmaceutical industry to not just to cater domestic demand but also demand of other less developed countries such as countries who are located in African continents. So you can see government support is also has played a key role in development of India's pharmaceutical sector. Now let us understand what are infrastructural growth drivers that has enabled India to scale up its pharmaceutical sector. First of all, Indian government, particularly government of India, it has provided special economic zones for development of pharmaceutical industries, be it Himalayan states such as Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, or in southern states such as Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. We see special economic zones that has enabled vaccine manufacturers to set up their manufacturing units. Additionally, India also has pharmaceutical hubs and clusters which has enabled growth of clusters of vaccine manufacturing and pharmaceutical industries. So these are the infrastructural growth drivers. Now let us move to government support, which is provided by the government in form of incentives and subsidies, especially to companies to establish their units in less developed states such as Himachal Pradesh as well as Uttarakhand. Because you can understand the city of Haridwar in Uttarakhand as well as city of Solan, which is located in Himachal Pradesh, they are key pharmaceutical hubs as far as Himalayan states are concerned. And this was made possible because of incentives and subsidies offered by both central as well as state governments. Further, regulatory compliance, especially by the Central Drug Service Organization, it has played a key role in harmonizing the regulatory environment of India with that of other countries. So, by harmonizing the regulatory environment, Indian companies are able to manufacture drugs which are then sold in other markets. So, this is what regulatory compliance has enabled India's growth. Now, let us understand global collaboration, which was very much visible during the time of COVID crisis. Because collaboration of companies which are located in developed countries such as UK and US, it enabled Indian vaccine manufacturers such as Serum Institute to manufacture vaccines such as Covishield. Additionally, Indian government, it handholded the support of Bharat vaccines, which manufactured the Covaxin vaccines, which protected Indian population from COVID pandemic. So this was the example of global collaboration that enabled India, first of all, to develop vaccines, and then it also enabled India to scale up the manufacturing of vaccines. So this enabled India to first of all provide vaccines for its domestic population, and then it also uh, made India export vaccines to other countries. Understood. So these were the factors that are driving the growth of pharmaceutical industry in India. Now let us understand what kind of government support has been extended to pharmaceutical industry. Now the first support is a encouraging regulatory framework, because first of all it is Drugs Cosmetics Act, which was passed in the year 1940. This enables or it regulates the import, manufacturing and distribution of pharmaceutical products in India. Additionally, there is this Central Drug Standard Control Organization, which approves new drugs, regulates its clinical trials, as well as regulates the sale of pharmaceuticals in India. Further, there is this Drug Control General of India, which is the sectoral regulator that grants approval for import and manufacture of drugs and pharmaceutical products in India. Additionally, the inspections of drug manufacturing units, they are undertaken by central drug regulating authorities. So you can understand the monitoring and regulation of manufacturing units. It has been successfully decentralized by giving powers to state drug regulating authorities. Now let us understand how has government promoted the research and innovation in the pharmaceutical sector. And this was done through Pharma Vision of the year 2020. Because this vision, it enabled India to become a drug discovery and innovation powerhouse. Further, there was this national policy on research and innovation, especially in the sector of pharmaceuticals, which also promoted research and innovation in this particular sector. Additionally, government has also enabled quality standards and compliant monitoring infrastructure. Because first of all, government provides good manufacturing practices, good laboratory practices that enables Indian companies to have a world-class manufacturing infrastructure. And this has enabled Indian companies to cater to demands, especially that of Western countries such as US and United Kingdom. Because you can understand Indian drugs that are manufactured in India, they are then exported to developed countries, hence constituting an important export market for India. So this was enabled by establishing a quality standards and compliance monitoring infrastructure. Further, Indian government, it also regulates the prices of pharmaceutical products to ensure affordability, especially with respect to domestic markets. And this was done through a liberalized patent regime, which I have already explained. Now, the regulatory framework for regulation of drug prices, it was undertaken through National Pharmaceutical Pricing Policy of the year 2012. And the authority which regulates, monitors and controls the prices, it is National Pharmaceutical and Pricing Authority. Now, also, Government of India brought a scheme which was known as Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana, which ensures availability of generic medicines all throughout the country. So, with these measures, the government wants to provide affordable medicines to Indian population. Also, government has brought forward industry development scheme such as production linked incentive scheme for key starting materials, advanced pharmaceutical ingredients, which enables India to become Atmanirbhar as far as entire supply chain of drug manufacturing is concerned. Also, government has promoted this scheme for bulk drugs promotion, which ensures manufacturing of generic medicines in India. Also, government has relaxed its FDI regulations to promote investment in Indian pharmaceutical companies. First of all, as far as greenfield FDI is concerned, the government has agreed upon 100% FDI under automatic route. Whereas in brownfield investment is concerned, government has also increased the FDI limit to 100%, with 74% being allowed into automatic investment category. So because of strict regulatory framework, promotion of innovation and development, quality standards and monitoring infrastructure, ensuring price regulation, developing industries through production linked schemes, as well as liberalized FDI policy has enabled the Indian pharmaceutical industry to play a global role as far as manufacturing and export of pharmaceutical products are concerned. So, in this regard, let us now take a look at what are the challenges which are faced by India's pharmaceutical industry. And the first challenge, which has been in news quite for some time, is related to the quality and safety measures. Because only recently, Indian cough syrup that are available, for example, in countries like Gambia, it was found adulterated with substance such as ethylene glycol. So this adulteration, it made Indian cough syrups unsuitable for consumption, and also it led to death in those countries. So this has brought a global attention on lack of quality and safety standards in Indian manufacturing companies. So this has not just reduced the reputation of Indian companies, but it has also, to some extent, impacted India's export to other countries. So this was the first challenge, that due to inadequate quality and safety measures, Indian products have gotten somewhat a notorious repute. So this is somewhat tried to be dealt with by the government, as in the news article it is highlighted that the central drug regulatory body, it has done away with the powers that are given to state drug regulatory authority. So in this regard, CDSCO will play the only role of uh, quality controlling of India's vaccine manufacturing is concerned. Now, in this regard, let us take a second challenge, which is related to liberalized intellectual property right regime. Now, if you remember closely, in the last slide, I highlighted that India's intellectual property rights regime, as far as pharmaceutical industry is concerned, it is quite liberalized. Now, this liberalized IPR regime has enabled India to become a global manufacturer of generic medicines. But on the other hand, this liberalized IPR regime has also somewhat discouraged the increased innovation in the sector, because companies, they are afraid to investing in India because they think their drugs will not be given adequate protection as far as patents are concerned, which will then reduce their financial incentives to invest in Indian market. So because of liberalized IPR regime, the investment in Indian pharmaceutical sector has somewhat reduced. So this is the second challenge. Now the third challenge, that India is dependent on imports for importing of key raw materials such as advanced pharmaceutical ingredients. Now these advanced pharmaceutical ingredients, they play a key raw material role as far as manufacture of medicines are concerned. Now the 70% of India's API demands, it is just met by one country, that is China. So you can understand India is dependent on imports for a key raw material of pharmaceutical sector. So this is a significant challenge. Now also India's pricing policy as far as medicines and pharmaceutical products are concerned, it is what you can call somewhat unstable, because government, it tries to provide pharmaceutical products to Indian population at an affordable price. So chopping and changing the list that is given under National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, it goes frequent changes as per as market demands. However, this unstable pricing policy has also reduces the incentive for companies to manufacture their drugs in India, because they cannot predict what kind of policy environment will be done by the government. So this kind of uncertainty, you can understand, discourages innovation and manufacturing in India, especially by companies which are based in foreign countries. Also, India's infrastructure as far as manufacturing is concerned, it is quite adequate. But as far as storage infrastructure is concerned, it is somewhat inadequate. And this we saw during the COVID crisis, because India, it did not have an adequate cold storage infrastructure which is required to store some kind of vaccines, such as RNA vaccines. Now, because of this inadequate storage infrastructure, the distribution of key pharmaceutical products, it is somewhat challenging because India is a large country. And in this regard, we saw that during COVID crisis, drugs such as remdesivir as well as hydroxychloroquine, which require lower temperature, they were unable to be distributed effectively in the Indian country. Also, what we have seen is Indian pharmaceutical companies, they somewhat subscribe to unethical practices because in connivance with the medical practitioners, Indian pharmaceutical industry, they encourage prescription of what you can call antibiotics. Now, frequent prescription of antibiotics by healthcare professionals has given an impression that antibiotics are necessary for all kinds of diseases. So, this overprescription of antibiotics has encouraged the over the counter sale of antibiotics, which has brought attention to the problem of antimicrobial resistance in the Indian population. Because use and overuse of antibiotics can create a chance of antimicrobial resistance, which will then make India's pharmaceutical sector more prone to antimicrobial resistance. So these were the challenges that are faced in general by Indian pharmaceutical industry. So in this regard, let us take a look at what should be the ideal way forward in order to reduce these challenges and enable Indian pharmaceutical industry to play a greater role as far as manufacturing and exports of pharmaceutical products are concerned. Now, first suggestion in this regard is the need to establish a strict quality control and transparency regime. Because first of all, harmonizing the domestic regulations with that of international best practices will enable Indian companies to manufacture key pharmaceutical products at a good quality. And then it will also increase the exports of pharmaceutical products out of India to other countries. Also, vaccine and drug manufacturers should also take a look at advancing their technological levels. Because, first of all, using emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, it will enable companies to automate their manufacturing practices and will also help them improve their quality standards. Additionally, utilizing computer simulation for drug discovery and testing will enable pharmaceutical companies to do away with the practice of animal testing. So, these are the imperatives that require technological advancement of Indian pharmaceutical companies. Further, there is an inherent need to improve infrastructure development as far as strengthening the supply chain, improving the production of APIs in India, as this will help reduce overall import dependencies of Indian companies on imports from China. Further, infrastructure development for developing track and trace of medicine will reduce the over the counter sale of important pharmaceutical products such as antibiotics. Further, Indian companies should also promote research and innovation, especially in drugs that are made for combating rare diseases. Further, the companies, they should also undertake developments, especially with respect to stem cell therapy or development of important biosimilars across the pharmaceutical industry. Further, there is also a need to improve ethical policy framework of the industry, because first of all, reviewing the marketing practices will help companies to reduce the misinformation in the markets with respect to use of pharmaceutical products. Hence, strict quality control and transparency mechanism, improving technological levels of companies, undertaking infrastructure development, especially with relation to manufacturing of advanced or active pharmaceutical ingredients, undertaking improved research and innovation, especially with respect to emerging diseases, as well as undertaking a strict ethical policy framework to review the marketing practices of the company are the ideal way forward as far as development of Indian pharmaceutical industry is concerned. So this was all for the first article of the day. So we'll move to the second article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper as well as the Business Line newspaper. Now, this news article has highlighted that foreign portfolio investors are dumping Indian equities and they're looking to move their investments out of Indian markets. Now, this news article, it is important from GS Paper 3 perspective because it highlights the pitfalls of liberalization of the Indian economy and how it tries to destabilize any economy in general. Further, these portfolio investments, they are important for the growth of Indian markets in general. So we'll take a overview or somewhat summarize what are the foreign portfolio investors and what are their significance as far as Indian markets are concerned. Now, if you look closely, this article also highlights that India's volatility index has increased and it has risen somewhat significantly. Now that this volatility index, it is the measure of volatility in Indian markets. Now, volatility is, you can understand to simplify, is an uncertainty in the market. So any uncertainty which can be caused by social, economic or political factors can destabilize Indian markets. So Indian policymakers, they need to understand what kind of volatility exists. So in this regard, there is this index called volatility index, which highlights the amount of volatility in India. So more is the VIX. So you can understand more is the volatility in the Indian market and vice versa is true. Now this volatility index, it highlights the level of volatility in any market. For example, during the subprime crisis of the year 2008 and 9, this India VIX, it increased to the levels of 55 to 60. Further, quite not so in the recent past, during COVID-19 crisis, this volatility index, it also reached somewhat at the levels of 50. So you can understand this volatility index, it highlights the confidence in Indian markets, that more is the volatility, the lesser is the confidence in Indian market. So with this, let us now understand what are foreign portfolio investments. Now these foreign portfolio investments, they are investment made in Indian companies, Indian stocks, equity markets, etc. And whenever this investment is less than 10% of the company's value, it is termed as a foreign portfolio investment. Further, these investments, they are made with respect to a short-term time frame, and these investments are made in equity, government securities, properties, etc. Now it is quite different from foreign direct investment, because foreign direct investment, it is separated from foreign portfolio investment based on the amount of investment. If the investment is more than 10% in any company, then it is categorized as foreign direct investment. Whereas if it is less than 10%, it is categorized as a foreign portfolio investment. Now, foreign direct investment, it includes transfer of not just capital, but also it includes transfer of technology as well as management skills. Whereas on the other hand, foreign portfolio investment, it only includes transfer of capital, that is money. Further, foreign direct investment, it leads to change in ownership as well as management ownership. Whereas on the other hand, foreign portfolio investment only highlights change in ownership and not of that of management. Further, the investment which is made in FDI, it flows into construction of physical assets. Whereas on the other hand, financial assets, they are only undertaken as far as foreign portfolio investment is concerned. Now, the nature of investment that I've already highlighted, as far as foreign portfolio investment are concerned, they are somewhat short-term investment which are unstable in nature. Hence, on the other hand, you can understand these foreign portfolio investment, they're also alternatively called as hot money, because these are unstable in nature and can come in and go out based on various factors. On the other hand, foreign direct investment, they are somewhat stable and they are investments which are done with respect to long-term framework is concerned. So by that virtue, you can understand the flexibility as far as foreign direct investment is concerned. It is somewhat less flexible because entry and exit in FDI, it is difficult. Whereas on the other hand, foreign portfolio investment, it is a more flexible kind of investment, which is done because entry and exit in these investments, they are somewhat easier. So these are the key differences between foreign direct and foreign portfolio investment. So you must remember the major criteria of determining whether the investment is FPI or FDI. It is based on the quantum or quantity of investment. If it is greater than 10%, then it is FDI. And if it is less than 10%, it means it is foreign portfolio investments or FPI. Understood? Now let us understand what are the significance of foreign portfolio investment as far as Indian economy is concerned. Now, first of all, increasing FPIs, it increases the accessibility of Indian markets as far as international capital is concerned. Because more and more investors, they invest in Indian markets, thereby increasing the accessibility of financing or that of international financing. Now, this increased investment in Indian market, it also increases the liquidity in Indian markets because more and more transactions, they take place in India's equity markets. So this increases the confidence of investors because their investment will be more liquid, thereby enabling them to enter or exit their markets at their own convenience. Further, this FPI, it has also enabled development of Indian equity markets because companies, they are undertaking greater performance by making their day-to-day business more transparent. Further, these companies, they also subscribe to good corporate governance practices and they also maintain a healthy balance sheet. So these companies that are Indian companies, they compete for foreign investment based on their improved financial and governance practices. So this has enabled the development of Indian equity markets because more and more good companies, they are vying for increased investment, especially with that of foreign investors. So these are the key significance as far as foreign portfolio investments for Indian economy is concerned. Now, in this regard, let us understand what are the implications of outflow of foreign portfolio investments from Indian economy. First of all, increased FPI outflow. It means that there will be increased demand for US dollars. Now, naturally, whenever the demand of US dollar increases, it reduces the demand of Indian rupee. So, because of reduced Indian rupee demand, we witnessed that during the episodes of outflow of foreign portfolio investment, Indian currency, that is rupee, it undergoes significant depreciation. Now, by depreciation of rupee, you can understand that India's import will become more expensive, whereas Indian exports to other markets will become less expensive. So, these are the impacts of FPI outflow as far as value of Indian rupee is concerned, that it depreciates the value of Indian rupee. Further, to tackle the depreciation of Indian rupee, the Reserve Bank of India, it intervenes in foreign exchange market. Now it tries to reduce or try to match the enhanced supply of dollars by supplying more and more dollars in the Indian economy. And the RBI does so with help of forex reserves. So whenever the RBI tries to intervene in foreign exchange market by increasing the supply of dollars from foreign exchange reserves, it leads to decline in India's forex reserves because the reserves, they are used to increase the supply of dollar in Indian economy because RBI is looking to stabilize the demand and supply equation as far as rupee and US dollar is concerned. Further, because of increased outflow, these foreign portfolio investors, they try to sell their government securities, which reduces, which you can understand, increase the supply of government securities in Indian market. Now it impacts bond price in a significant manner. And let me help you understand this with the help of an example. For example, any FPI investor, it purchases a government security at rupees 100. And this government security, it promises the investor the return of 5%. So you can understand after the maturity period, the investor will get back his principal amount as well as interest in form of 105 rupees. So you can understand the yield on this bond is 5%. So this is bond price and this is yield. Now, whenever the FPI it is looking to sell this investment at a quicker pace, it means that the FPI will try to reduce the bond price in order to make these bonds more attractive to secondary investors. So whenever the FPI they are trying to sell these bonds, they'll sell these bonds at somewhat lower prices, for example at rupees 95. So whosoever buys this government security from an outgoing FPI, they will get again a 5% return on the original price, which will help them to get this bond at a 105 rupee price. So you can understand the yield on this security is about 10.52%. So whenever the bond prices reduce, you can understand the yield on bonds, it increases. Understand, because the bond prices is reduced, so the natural yield that the investor will get, it will increase. So whenever the FPIs they are trying to sell government securities, it increases the supply of government securities, thereby reducing their bond price. So naturally it means the yields on government securities in India will rise in case of increased FPI outflow. So these were the important implications of FPI outflow on Indian economy. First of all, that rupee will undergo depreciation. Further, there will be decline in India's foreign reserves. Whereas on the other hand, the government securities will see rise in their yield levels. Understood? So with this article, now let us move to the next article, which you can see appeared in the Indian Express newspaper. Now this news article highlights that the artificial intelligence tool of the platform X, it is termed as Grok. Now in the recent development, as the news article highlights, this AI tool will try to generate new information based on first news article as well as commentary which is done on the platform X. Now this new information which will be generated by the AI tool, it has certain significance as far as flow of information is concerned. Now this news article is important from GS paper 3 perspective because you can understand it asks the aspirants to have awareness in the fields of information technologies as well as computers. Now in this regard, this news article is important as any information which is generated by an AI tool is not 100% accurate. So this has several implications on not just society but also on the economy of a particular industry. So let us understand what are the implications of AI generated summaries are there on society in general. First of all, the quality of information that are generated through these AI tools, they not just generate summaries based on news articles, but also on commentaries made by general public like you and I. So the authenticity or quality of these news summaries, they are not authentic in nature. So by that virtue, you can understand these AI generated summaries, they are not authoritative source of information. So depending upon whether the conversation is taking place between experts or between commoners, the authoritative source of this information cannot be established in a definite manner. Further, whenever these AI generated summaries will be brought by technology companies, it will also enable these technologies companies to be open to government regulations. So, in order to promote their commercial interest, these technology companies will undertake what is known as self censorship. So, you can understand this will reduce the amount of freedom of speech and expression in any society. Further, whenever the generated summaries will be undertaken by social media companies, it will lead to reduction in traffic to websites of media agencies. So the traffic of media agencies, especially on the websites, it will reduce, which will also reduce the chances of these companies generating revenues from advertisements as well as subscription events. Now, we have seen recently that many important or big media houses such as Associated Press as well as Financial Times, they have undertaken collaboration with important AI generating companies such as OpenAI. Whereas on the other hand, small and independent news organizations, they are unable to tie up with these mega AI companies. So this not just reduces the traffic to media agencies in general, but it also affects the economic balance sheets of smaller companies. So these are the implications of AI generated summary on any society in general. Now let us move to the next set of articles which are somewhat related to prelims examination. Now this first set of article you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper as well as the Indian Express newspaper. Now this news article highlights that KABIL, which is the full form of Khanij Bidesh India Limited, it will acquire important assets for lithium extraction in Australia. Now, this news article is important from GS Paper 1 perspective, which deals with distribution of key natural resources across the world. Now, worldwide, there has been increased awareness about the importance of critical minerals because these minerals they are used in electronic products and other emerging technological products. Now, important minerals they are important from prelims perspective. Case in point, this question which appeared in the prelims of the year 2020, and it asked us questions related to major minerals. So, in this regard, let us discuss what are critical minerals are all about. Now, you can understand these critical minerals they are distributed all across the world. However, their major distribution is across handful of countries such as China, or countries which are located in South America such as Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, as well as in Australasia continent. So countries like India, it is looking to develop and build capacity, especially in other countries, to source their critical minerals as far as domestic manufacturing is concerned. So in this regard, let us understand what are critical minerals. Now these critical minerals, they can be either metallic or non-metallic elements which are determined by two important characteristics. First of all, that these minerals, they are very much essential for functioning of our modern technological tools as well as gadgets. Also, these minerals, they are at significant risk of their disruption in their supply chains. So, based on individual needs of a country can have different sets of critical minerals. But some minerals such as graphite, lithium as well as cobalt, they are designated as critical minerals worldwide. So important economies such as India and other countries, they are looking to establish a resilient supply chain as far as sourcing of these key critical elements are concerned. In this regard, the government of India has formed a company called Khanij Bidesh India Limited, which is abbreviated as KABIL, as it is a joint venture between three important PSUs, that is National Aluminium Company, Hindustan Copper Limited, as well as Mineral Exploration Corporation Limited. Now, the target of this company is to identify, acquire, develop processes, and make commercial usage of strategic minerals which are located in overseas locations. Now, these are done to ensure continuous supply of critical and strategic minerals to Indian domestic markets. Now, for example, this company called KABIL, it is focusing exclusively on identifying and sourcing key elements such as lithium and cobalt. Additionally, it is engaging with few companies and projects in far locations as well as Australia as well as Argentina. Now, in this regard, let us solve the practice question. Now, consider the following statements. Statement 1, it states that KABIL, it is a company fully owned by Government of India. Now, this statement is incorrect because I've already highlighted it is a joint venture company of three PSUs, that is NALCO, Hindustan Copper Limited, as well as Mineral Exploration Corporation Limited. Now, the second statement that KABIL, it aims to identify, acquire, develop processes and make commercial use of strategic minerals in overseas locations for supply in India. Now, this statement is correct because I've already highlighted this here. So, which of the following statement is with respect to the above statement is correct? As statement first is incorrect, thereby option D is the right answer. Understood? So let us move to the next article that deals with what are the rules in contesting seats. Now this article is in news because many significant politicians in India, they are contesting from two different seats in this Lok Sabha elections. Now this article highlights what are the limits on how many seats can a candidate contest. Now in this regard, the Parliament of India, it passed what is known as Representations of People Act of the year 1951, which regulates conduct of important political stakeholders. Now the section 33 subpart 7 of this act, it highlights that a candidate is allowed to contest as only at max from 2 seats. Now there was no bar previously. However, it was amended in the year 1996 to introduce a cap on just 2 seats. Further, the section 70 of this particular act, it highlights that a candidate can only hold 1 seat at a time, which means if a candidate is elected from 2 different seats, it means that he or she will have to exercise his option for opting for just 1 seat, which means vacating the other seat, or otherwise both of the seats will go vacant. So you can understand there is a current bar that a candidate can only contest from maximum of 2 seats. And this was done to discourage the practices, as previously candidates, they were opting for many seats and it led to frequent by-elections on the resigned seats. Understood. So in this regard, let us understand important qualifications which are required for a member to become member of parliament, that is member of the Lok Sabha. Now in this regard, the Constitution of India, it lays 4 important qualifications. First is that the candidate must be a citizen of India and he or she must subscribe to the oath of affirmation bearing the faith and allegiance first of all to the Constitution of India and also upholding the sovereignty and integrity of India. Further, the candidate must be more than 25 years of age and also should possess qualification as prescribed by Parliament of India. So in this regard, the Parliament has given additional qualifications in the Representation of Peoples Act. That is, the elector for a particular constituency must be registered as an elector anywhere in India. For example, our Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi, he is a voter in the Ahmedabad East constituency. Whereas on the other hand, he is contesting elections from Varanasi Lok Sabha seat, which is in Uttar Pradesh. So you can understand any candidate must be an elector in any of the constituencies in India, irrespective of what seat he or she must be contesting the elections from. Further, the RPA, it also highlights that the member of scheduled caste or tribe, if he or she were to contest from a reserved seat, should be a member of these reserved categories. Whereas the member of these categories can also contest from seats which are not reserved from them. Now let us understand what are the disqualifications or conditions which will disqualify a particular person from membership of Lok Sabha. In this regard, Constitution of India, it highlights that if any member they hold office of profit under union or state government, then they'll be disqualified from the membership of Lok Sabha. Further, they should be of either unsound mind or so be declared by court, or whether they were declared as an undischarged solvent, or whether they voluntarily requisite their citizenship of India, then they'll also be subjected to disqualification as a member of Lok Sabha. Additionally, the Parliament has provided additional disqualifications in the Representation of People Act, which means if a person they are found guilty of certain election offences or corrupt practices, then they'll also be disqualified. In addition to be convicted of any offences which provides for imprisonment of more than 2 years, then again they'll be disqualified as per as Representation of People Act. So in this regard, let us now solve the practice question. Now this practice question, it asks us to consider the following criteria for disqualification for a member of parliament. The first is holding of any office of profit under union of state governments, conviction for any offences resulting in imprisonment for more than 2 years, declaration as an undischarged solvent, and be found of guilty of certain electoral offences or corrupt practices in elections. Now, as you can see, the criteria that is first and third, they are given in Constitution of India, whereas the criteria 4 and second, they are given in the Representation of People Act of the year 1951. So the practice question, it asks us to identify how many of the above they are mentioned in the Constitution of India and not RPA. So as first and third criteria they are mentioned in Constitution, which means option B is the correct answer. Now let us quickly move to the third article of the day, which you can understand appeared in the Business Line newspaper. Now these two articles, it highlights the importance of the sectoral regulator of the insurance sector, that is Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. Now this is an important statutory body, hence it is important from GS paper 2 perspective. Further, important regulatory authority has been a subject of a question in UPSC Prelims. Case in point, this question in the year 2018. So this is important from Prelims perspective. So let us quickly understand what is this Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. Now the nature of this body is statutory, as this body was formed as per the provisions of IRDAI Act of the year 1999. The headquarters of this body, it is located in the city of Hyderabad, which is the capital city of state of Telangana. Now this body, it functions under Department of Financial Services, which is under Ministry of Finance. Now it undertakes various functions, such as it grants licenses to stakeholders such as insurance companies and intermediaries, in addition to protecting interest of policyholders. Further, it regulates the investment made by insurance companies and other participants, and it undertakes inspection, conduct inquiries and investigation into the conduct of insurance companies and intermediaries, and it also adjudicates the disputes between insurance companies and other intermediaries. Now, in this regard, let us solve the practice question. With reference to Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, consider the following statements. The first statement, it is a statutory body under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Commerce and Industry, which is an incorrect statement because it is under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Finance, specifically Department of Financial Services. Now the second statement, the headquarter of IRDAI, it is situated in Mumbai, which again is incorrect because it is situated in Hyderabad. Third statement, this body, it regulates the investment of funds by professional organizations connected with the insurance business. Now this is correct statement, as I've already highlighted, it regulates investment of funds by professional organizations and insurance companies. So as only statement third was correct, hence option A is the right answer. Now let us quickly move to the last article of the day, which highlights that the National Pension Scheme has completed 15 years of existence. Now this pension scheme, it is important as far as achieving inclusive growth in India is concerned. So this is important from GS paper 3 perspective. Further, a question has appeared in UPSC Prelims in the year 2017 directly with respect to National Pension Scheme. So this news article is important as National Pension Scheme has completed 15 years of existence. Now let us understand what is this National Pension Scheme. Now this is a contribution based scheme which is regulated by the Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority. Now any citizen of India, be it both residents and non-residents, and overseas citizens of India between the age group of 18 to 17 are eligible to join this scheme. Further, the eligible beneficiaries include employees of the central government, with an exception of the members of armed forces. Additionally, almost all the state government employees, except few such as employees of West Bengal government, they are included as far as beneficiaries of this scheme are concerned, in addition to employees belonging to private sector, as they were allowed to join this scheme from 2009 onwards. Now, this scheme, as I've already highlighted, it is a contribution based scheme because 10% of the salary and DNS allowance of an employee, it is contributed to the NPS fund, which a matching contribution from the government also. Now, earlier, the government used to also contribute the 10% of the salary and DNS allowance. However, in the year 2019, it was increased to 14% as far as central government is concerned. Further, an option was given to state governments that they can also increase their contribution to up to 14% through a notification. So, now what happens to the contribution which are made by both employees and governments into the NPS scheme? Now, these contributions, they are invested in certain funds which are done to generate higher returns on these particular investments. And the returns which are get by the beneficiaries, they are dependent on many factors, such as what are their contributions, or at what age they subscribe to this particular scheme, and what kind of funds they have invested their proceeds to. So the returns, they are not fixed but rather flexible based on various different considerations. Additionally, upon superannuation, that is retirement, the beneficiaries, they can withdraw as much as up to 60% of their funds, whereas at least 40% of the funds, they are to be invested in annuity products, which will enable the beneficiaries to get monthly pension from this invested income. Understood? So based on this information, let us quickly solve the practice question. The first statement, NPS, it is a type of contribution based pension fund, which is a correct statement. Second statement, the pension is fixed at 50% of the last basic salary drawn along with other benefits, as this is an incorrect statement because the pension is not fixed but rather flexible, and it is based on various circumstances such as what kind of investment you have made, what is the amount of investment you've made, and at what age you subscribe to the scheme. Understood? Now the third statement, that employee contributes 10% of salary and DNS allowance with an equal contribution by the government, which again is an incorrect statement because earlier the government used to make equal contribution, but this was increased in the year 2019 because central government, it has increased its contribution from 10 to 14%. So it contributes more than employees and not equal contribution. Understood? So the third statement here is also incorrect. So as only first statement is incorrect, hereby the correct answer to this practice question is also option A. So with this, I conclude our today's session of Daily News Simplified, and we'll see you again tomorrow sharp at 6 p.m. So until then, I bid you a very good night.